It was an unseasonably warm February day in 2017 in the small rural town of Delphi, Indiana, a place where everyone knows each other and they look out for each other. It's not a place where you worry when your teenage kids decide to go on an adventure. So when Abby Williams and her best friend Libby German decided to go on a hike near the Monon High Bridge in the middle of the day, no one thought it was dangerous. But when Libby and Abby did not show up when they were supposed to get picked up, their families began to worry and they began to search. Then the next day, the worst news possible. The bodies of these two girls were found, both victims of murder. After 5 frustrating years, this man, Richard Allen, was arrested for killing both girls. Allen admitted being in the area that day, and prosecutors say a bullet found at the scene was forensically connected to his gun. One problem: Abby and Libby were not shot. And now we're learning a lot more about the murders through documents filed in court by Allen's attorneys. Information that the defense suggests shows ritualistic killings connected to Odinism, an ancient Nordic religion allegedly followed by some local white nationalists. They also say there is no way one man could have pulled off this double murder. Tonight, we examine the scene of the murders, the clues left behind, and the evidence connected to the victims as we continue to investigate the Delphi murders. I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Another big hour here as we take a closer look at the Delphi murders. So much more information now coming to light through these papers that were filed by the defense. But let's remind you, this crime scene, absolutely brutal. Brutal. If you're a family member, one of the parents, grandparents, loved ones of these two girls, you have to be absolutely horrified about what has now become publicly revealed and is part of this case. But the defense is saying everything that is being revealed helps them, proves that someone else is responsible for this, not Richard Allen, the man who's been accused. So the question really is, for everyone involved and ultimately for those 12 jurors who will make the decision here and tell us what happened, what does the evidence say? What does this evidence mean? Evidence speaks, not literally, but it tells a story. And when this becomes a murder trial, which it's on its way to being a trial, that evidence has to tell the story. And will this story be that Richard Allen is the one responsible, or is the story, wait a minute, this doesn't look like Richard Allen did it. This looks like something completely different. And tonight we're going to look at this evidence and try to figure out what it's telling us now, what we are learning and what has been revealed. One of the questions that the defense is throwing out there is was this a one-man job? And they're saying no, that everything suggests that it could not have been Richard Allen alone committing this crime. Now, they're not conceding that he's there and he got a helper. No, they're saying completely different people, a different group is responsible. But you have to look at all the facts at the scene and the circumstances surrounding what happened to Abby and Libby that day. And could one man by himself pull this off? We're going to address that question tonight on this program. Also, and this is looming large, and we'll be continuing to talk about this every time we talk about the case, was this a ritualistic killing? Was this some sort of bizarre ritual that took place that day? And is it connected to Odinism, a word that was 1,000% foreign to me until about, just over 24 hours ago? Now we know it's this ancient Nordic religion that, according to the defense, has been hijacked by white nationalists, a group, and specifically some that are in Indiana, that this is somehow a racial, some sort of racist killing of these two girls? How do those pieces fit together? Does it fit together? And there's always two ways to look at this, and I want you to remember this always when the defense is putting out an alternative theory. Look at their theory and then just flip it on its head and imagine if what the defense is saying is the prosecution's case. And if what the prosecution is saying is the defense case, right? Because that's what would happen. If you turned around and as prosecutors you went after the people that the defense says are responsible, is there more evidence against them? Or if that was the case, would you be looking at Richard Allen and saying, well, wait a minute, what about this guy Richard Allen? That's the way I always analyze this. And I do that because I'm concerned about the truth. A defense attorney, that's not their job. Their job is to put the prosecution to the test to make sure they prove their case beyond any reasonable doubt. But in terms of proving things and raising, they just raise doubts. That's part of their job, is to say there's reasonable alternative explanations. But are they better explanations than for what the prosecution is alleging? And how reasonable are they when you really look at them? And that's part of the analysis. Now, I don't know what the truth is here because we haven't seen all the evidence, but we now, tonight, as we sit here, have been privy to a lot more than we were before the defense filed these papers and it was released. So I want to start here because this is extremely significant to me, which is what the victims looked like at the scene and what was with them. Because a lot of this, the defense says, and this is their theory again, that it's ritualistic, that it shows that something was done here purposely and there's some message that is left behind at the scene. So let's take a look, based upon what the defense has filed here, what they are saying Abby and Libby appeared to look like. Now they have Libby lying flat on her back, left arm stretched above her head, touching the base of the large tree. Now what you're looking at, this depiction, is what we put together based upon this memorandum. This actual image that you're looking at right now is not something that is part of any filing by anyone. We here at Closing Arguments, based upon this description, have put this together. Libby's right arm was placed along the side of her body. A large branch was placed on her left shoulder. The branch extended above Libby's head and below her legs. Two smaller branches formed a V where her legs joined. Both sides of the V extended upwards towards Libby's head. The branch extended across Libby's body on a line from her right shoulder to her left shoulder. Now, Abby. Just feet away from Abby, at an angle, Abby's legs are feet away from Libby's legs, their heads just a few feet apart. Abby was on her back, elbows were bent with her arms placed on her chest, Abby's left hand and arm near the left side of her face, right hand and arm near the right side of her face. Okay, there, a little bit of interpretation, however you interpret that, that's how we are, but it could be different, but it's something like that, I would think. Abby's left leg was straight while her right leg was bent at the knee. Her bent right leg was under her left leg. 3 tree branches were placed on top of Abby in the shape of an asterisk. Above Abby's head, smaller sticks placed over her hair, crudely mimicking horns or antlers. So again, looking at this, we put that together based upon the description I read to you. Now, what I read to you is directly from the papers filed by the defense. So this is what they are alleging the evidence says, based upon information they've gotten from investigators and the prosecution. So let's talk some more about this. Joining us right now in studio, co-host and producer of Down the Hill, the Delphi Murders podcast, and Court TV senior writer Barbara McDonald is with us. Barbara, let's start here, okay? You've seen different depictions of those stick formations that everyone's talking about now, these stick formations on the two girls. What have you seen? And let's begin with Abby.
All right, so I've been hearing about these stick formations and this image on the tree for a very long time, and very different characterizations than what's in this memorandum. Sources close to the investigation have provided me with drawings of what they say those images look like, the arrangement of those sticks. So let's start with the one of Abby, and it shows 3 sticks. Now, we have not placed her body here because this is how it was provided to me. We don't know exactly what the positioning on top of her was like, but this is supposed to be a representation of what the image looked like, the way the sticks were formed. Now let's put up the image from Libby. And there's 5 sticks involved here by my count. And you can look at these and decide if they look like something to you or look like they're randomly placed. I have spoken to many investigators who were on the scene at the time who say the assumption was they were randomly placed. They did not see a pattern. They didn't see intentionality there. The other interesting thing about these sticks, they did not collect them when they collected evidence from the crime scene.
Whoa, slow down. Sticks are placed on the bodies of the 2 victims here, and they're not collected as evidence?
They were not collected as evidence until several weeks later, conceivably when this Odinism stuff started to arise within the investigation, and they went back to try to collect those sticks. Now, the other thing we have an image of is what was depicted on the tree, and it's described in this memorandum as being the letter F, a rune painted in blood.
Blood, right?
That was tested according to the memo. It's Libby's blood, according to the memo.
That's what the defense is saying.
Yes. I have not heard that part of it from my sources, but I was given a rendering of what the blood on the tree, or whatever the substance on the tree, appeared to be. And
that's what we're looking at right now.
This is more accurate. Several of the investigators told me they thought that it was a perhaps partial handprint of the person who committed the crime, leaned up against the tree, and that's how it was placed there.
All right, let's put it back up. Let's put that back up. This is significant. This is important. Now, the defense is saying this is the letter F.
Yes. Now, we also have a second image where we have placed that rune, the F image, over this. And you can decide for yourself if it looks like the exact same image or not. Again, many investigators thought that it was a handprint or something that was just done during the commission of the crime and not intentionally placed there. But just like the sticks, Vinny, this was not taken as evidence. The tree was not cut down, the bark was not removed, it was left at the scene, photographed, swabbed.
Everything was photographed though, right? The scene had to be photographed at a minimum. At a minimum.
But you would think,
yeah,
at least the bark, from what I've heard, at least the bark should have been taken, if not that chunk of the tree.
Well, if they're saying it's Libby's blood, then someone would have had to taken a sample of the blood, right?
Yes.
You would think? Okay.
According to the memo, they say the DNA testing shows that it is her blood.
This is, you know, what to make of this, right? It seems like there's more to it. There's a reason you're putting the sticks there. You know, I mean, they're put there purposely. Whether they mean something, whether they are these secret codes, some Odinistic type of meaning is really the question, right?
It was characterized to me as being perhaps an abandoned effort to cover the bodies.
Okay, I get that. All right, stay where you are. Joining us now in Delphi, Indiana, podcaster Gray Hughes from Gray Hughes Investigates. Gray, great to see you tonight. first of all, this is like huge information that's being released, right? This, for me, came out of left field, the fact that all this information is released. What's your headline, Gray? What's the first thing that struck you in this after covering this for so long?
Well, I, like Barbara, also have heard most of these rumors the whole time with the letter F and the sticks. And I actually, the letter F on a tree is the thing that stuck out to me. Like, whoa, I heard about the letter F, but I didn't know that it was in blood on a tree. But now when you look at it, that with the information that Barbara just showed us, the image there, I mean, who knows how that got there? It could be even, you know, not to sound gross, but like arterial blood spatter that went up onto the tree right there, the way that looks in the picture there. So now that sort of debunks my, like, whoa, there was a letter F on the tree, if that's really what it looks like Barbara showed there.
How about the sticks? And this whole notion of Odinism. Let me ask you, first of all, did you ever hear that term Odinism before the release of all this?
Believe it or not, I have. I had this friend that took a picture at that early on, because he just travels around the country, and he sent it in, and these people went, oh, look at that. They made it seem like we were like part of something just because he took a picture. But I think it's the most, I got to just be honest, like the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard. I feel like when I read through this document, it was the most sarcastic, sort of almost childishly written document. I mean, I've never seen something that's supposed to be professional that sounded the way it did. What did you guys think?
Well, I'm looking at it, and I always look at things in terms of how does it play in front of a jury, what can be done in front of a jury, and to me, what they have done at this point is make people think, well, what exactly was going on at the scene? And were there investigators? And to me, this is the part that stuck out to me, is they're alleging that there's a group of 3 investigators that were following this theory and believe there is something to it. You're out there in Delphi right now. Any sort of buzz on the ground out there with the release of all this, Gray?
Yeah, I mean, I've actually talked to family members and the ex-prosecutor from a long time ago. He doesn't really keep up on it as well, but I mean, let's just look forward to perhaps a rebuttal from Liggett. I think that's kind of the buzz. I mean, when I went through the document, I don't know if you're interested in this portion, but there was a glaring omission of the 3 girls that Richard Allen passed. So remember when Richard Allen says he got there, he passed 3 girls on his way to the bridge. Those 3 girls were leaving the area. They passed the bench right there near the, you know, heading towards the Freedom Bridge at probably, I think it was 126. Richard Allen's driving by up above on the street. He parks his car at 1:30, he said, and then he walks onto the trail, and those 3 girls walk right by him, and then he admits that he walked by those same 3 girls. So that places him heading to the bridge at 1:30, but in the document, it says 12 to 1:30 is when he left, but he wasn't leaving at 1:30. He was going towards the Monenhigh Bridge. So why did they leave that out of the document?
Well, it doesn't help you. That's why you leave it out. So, but fascinating. So give me your bottom line now, Greg, from having gone through this, covered this for so many years. Had you, before this time, ever thought that this could have been a ritualistic killing and that you were looking for some group, some sect out there in Indiana?
I've never believed that that's what it was. I mean, I originally thought it was a lone wolf killer that showed up to the bridge that day hunting somebody. Then they came with the social media angle with Keegan Klein and the Anthony Schatz's profile. And now it seems like it went back to the individual person, being Richard Allen, except, I mean, don't you guys feel like it's a little strange that the only reason that let's see, that the Anthony Shots profile that didn't get to meet Libby that day was because some other random killer killed the girl.
Yeah,
I mean,
I've been saying this as well. You know, what are the odds? Like, what are the odds that you are interacting with someone who's an alleged, or not an alleged, now he's convicted child pornographer who put up this site, and then someone else intervenes? There's got to be some more of a connection. I want to put up on the screen, this is some more evidence from the scene. Libby's shoe and cell phone containing the Bridge Guy video were found under Abby's lower back. A single bullet found buried under leaves and dirt between the two girls. Barbara McDonald, let me ask you about this. This is crucial evidence for prosecutors, right? This video. I don't think the Bridge Guy, the killer, knew that they were videotaped that day.
No, I agree.
There's no way.
I agree.
Otherwise, the phone would never be there.
Right.
And what about the bullet, though? There's a problem with the bullet, I think, for prosecutors here.
I've heard about the bullet for many years, and I have never heard a definitive theory from my sources that it does come from the suspect. One speculation was that maybe it comes from law enforcement. It was the same caliber as they use. And as you know, ejection mark testing is not as reliable as a bullet that's been fired.
Yeah, it's not DNA.
Right.
It's definitely not DNA.
Which is what we need in this case,
Right.
and apparently don't have.
And don't have the DNA. Gray, what are your thoughts about that? The fact that the bullet is found there. I mean, is the defense going to try? The defense may try to say that Richard Allen's being framed, or it's just a coincidence that it's there, or it's not his bullet.
Well, after I talked to the family members about what was on the video itself, and early on, like in the first, 6 months of the case, I was told that there was a click sound, that they think that was the gun chambering a bullet, and then that was used to control the girls. And obviously they weren't killed with a bullet, but maybe at some point he ejected that bullet at the crime scene. That's all I can come up with.
And then leaves it there. Doesn't do anything.
Well, leaves the phone.
And leaves the phone and is busy putting sticks on top of the victims. That's what they're going to have to argue. Okay, we've got a lot to get to. Gray Hughes investigates. You need to check it out. Thanks so much, Gray. Great to see you. Barbara McDonald doing great work as always. I see you all the time because you work here, which is awesome. Okay, so coming up, we're going to again go to that crime scene. We're going to talk about ritualistic killings. We're going to bring in experts to talk about that. Plus, coming up next hour. In Manatee County, Florida, former swimsuit model and ballerina Ashley Benefield shot and killed her husband, Doug Benefield, in the middle of a custody dispute. But she claims it was self-defense. Tonight, a huge ruling by the judge related to Ashley's stand your ground claim.
The case, the rule doesn't have a particular time, but there's case law. The cases are starting to come out saying you can't delay. So there's some folks that waited right until the eve of trial and then filed the writ. So in this case, I'm confident that you're going to file it very soon.
Tragedy in the Hollywood Hills. Prominent therapist Dr. Amy Hardwick found fatally injured under her balcony.
Her ex-boyfriend on trial for her murder.
She had a restraining order against him.
He strangled her, lifted her up over the balcony, and dropped her.
He never intended on killing her.
Is this a case of a jilted lover turned obsessive stalker?
The Hollywood Obsession Murder Trial. Trial coverage weekday mornings at 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
For years, that was the biggest piece of evidence that we knew about in the Delphi murder case, the video and then the audio of the alleged killer. Well, now, after the defense has filed these papers, they've described the murder scene, and we have put together this graphic representation of what is described by the defense and what they filed with the court. Abby and Libby next to one another near this tree with these sticks. Are they in some form of a a message that is being sent? Is this ritualistic? Some other facts here. Libby was found nude. Blood spots and blood drippings were seen all over Libby's body. No blood sprayed or dripped onto the leaves or the tree near Libby's head and sliced neck. Abby was found fully clothed but dressed in Libby's sweatshirt and jeans. Abby was found wearing 2 bras. There was no blood on Abby's clothes. Very little blood on Abby's body apart from the fatal wound on her neck. Libby's phone and shoe were found under Abby's lower back. So, is this a ritualistic killing? Is it consistent with that? Joining us from Philadelphia, ritual murder expert and author of Investigating Religious Terrorism and Ritualistic Crimes, Dawn Perlmutter is with us. In Jacksonville, Alabama, forensic death investigator, professor of forensics at Jacksonville State University, and host of the incredibly popular Body Bags podcast, Joseph Scott Morgan. And in Pensacola, Florida, private investigator Lauren Vellucci is with us. Great to see everyone tonight. Thank you for being here. Dawn, I'll begin with you. Based upon what we are learning from the defense here, does this strike you as a ritualistic murder scene?
Well, I just have to emphasize that I did not observe any of the photos. I only have the information that I read and the descriptions. But I can tell you from what I've read, this is a classic ritual murder. I've worked on dozens of these types of homicide cases. Ritual homicide involves acts that go beyond the actions necessary to conduct the crime or elude the police. This is not a counter-forensic measure. You don't do all of that just to hide the body. It has all of the elements. It has symbols at the scene. What you're not taking into account when they're looking at the shapes of these branches. And by the way, ritualistic crimes are typically outdoor crime scenes because they're nature-based ideologies. But when you're looking at the symbols, you need to account for the shape of the body underneath it when you're interpreting it. You're not just looking at the sticks. It can be the entire thing, and it has meaning to whoever did it. I really do not think it's random. The other thing is obviously the cause of death is significant. In ritualistic crimes, you do not get gunshots. They're always typically knife wounds. And there's always things that are done with the blood. And in this case, obviously a secondary scene, but blood, whether it's blood spatter or what was on the tree, it seems that this was not random at all. Body positioning is very significant. And as I said, it will have some meaning to the person who did it. In terms of Odinism, which I'm very familiar with, it would be consistent with racist Odinism, which is very popular, has been popular among neo-Nazi skinheads and prison gangs since the late 90s. In fact, there's many groups right now that are taking it to the next level. We have a blood tribe leader who has runes tattooed on his face that translate to son of Wotan, which is one of the also known as Odinism. So to me,
so based upon what the defense is saying here, you think there's something to it. And again, you prefaced it all by saying you haven't seen the actual photos. None of us have. Joseph Scott Morgan, let's start first with the bodies. Does that appear posed the way it's described? Does it appear that someone could be murdered or dragged and naturally end up that way? And what are your thoughts about the blood and lack of blood in parts of this scene?
Again, without having access to the imagery, it's very difficult for me to opine about this. Positionality is everything, whether it's some kind of ritualistic event, and even when we work cases involving serialized perpetrators, they have a ritual in and of themselves. They have a rich fantasy life as well. If they're acting out, they can pose bodies. I worked a series of homicides where bodies were posed in kind of Leonardo da Vinci's classic anatomical man position. And you also have this issue that's really significant to me, that is undressing and redressing, which is something that's quite striking to me that came out. But that's the scene as far as I can understand it at this point. I don't know that this is necessarily randomized, but if this is the coverage that is on top of these bodies, it would seem to me that it was a very poor effort to obscure the bodies, because that's the goal with covering bodies, right? You want them out of sight. We don't know how robust any of the vegetation was. We don't know how fresh the vegetation was, and it's very troubling to me, Vin, that these items were not collected, specifically as it applies to tool marks. They were not collected in the beginning, because we're talking about saw marks, bolt cutters, perhaps. I don't know, how were these limbs, if they are in fact limbs, how were they trimmed away? Because that's a big telltale there. You're leaving money on the ground there from an evidentiary standpoint. Why would you not collect it at that point in time? I don't understand that.
Lauren Vellucci, what questions do you have based upon what the defense has now filed in court? What questions does that raise for you as an investigator?
I agree with JSM. I mean, I think it's appalling that they didn't take the sticks as evidence. Judging from the height of the girls, these sticks had to be decent size. So were they skinny little sticks that they could have easily broken? It seems more logical that they were long, the size of them, because some of them were the length of the bodies of the girls. So therefore, again, how would they have caught them? It's very troubling. That piece of information that you guys just brought out blows my mind. And from an investigation standpoint, it's appalling.
So, Dawn, as we try to get to the truth of what happened here, people involved in a ritualistic killing, would it just be a one-off? Like, let's say there's a group of Odinists who are practicing and doing sacrifices or rituals like this. Would there be more bodies? Because this goes back all the way to 2017, and we have heard nothing about other victims in this area.
Well, you'd have to know what type of ritual. Again, if it's not somebody connected to one of these organized ideologies, it could be something they're just inventing in their mind. But it could also be, you don't know if it's an initiation, if it's sacrificial. There's a lot of different types of rituals that are done.
Well, let me lay this out. Let me lay this out, though, Dawn, because here's what the defense is saying. The defense is saying one of these girls has a mom who would date interracially. So that was the motivation behind all of this. This is part of their theory. And it's this group that is, practicing Odinism. And this is why they attacked these particular girls. I mean, that's part of what they're laying out there as potentially what happened here. Does it make it less plausible that there haven't been other attacks in the area? Like a group, would they just kind of go after one particular victim and one off and that's it? We don't see bodies all over the place?
No, that it's quite possible and plausible. I mean, there are groups like this that not only ritually murder, they ritually rape women. They're active. They could be doing it in other places. I guess what I'm trying to say is this does happen, as bizarre as it sounds. There are ritual murders, and a lot of these racist Odinists are growing. They are recruiting, and they're part of this like warrior tribal they identify with that ideology. So it's very plausible, and I think again, this is without seeing any of the not seeing other evidence, but it is plausible to me that this happened.
Fair enough. Our guests are great. They're staying with us. When we come back, we're going to ask this question. Was this a one-man job? Could one person have done all of this to these two young girls?
Richard Allen, you child murderer! Why did you do it? Shame on you! Shame on you, Richard! You're going to prison for the rest of your life! Shame on you, Richard Allen!
There's Richard Allen. The question is, did he do it by himself? Could one person have done this? The defense says no way. Take a look on the screen, folks. They say one man, 5 foot 4 inches in stature, handled all these tasks, from the abduction at the High Bridge to the crossing over the cold flowing river to the subduing of one girl while the other is killed to the killing of the second girl, waiting while Abby died a slow death. Then clothing Abby with very little to any blood transfer on said clothing, to the arrangement of the sticks into runes, to the painting of the F rune on the tree, to the throwing of the clothing items into the river, to the departure from the crime scene, and finally to traversing hundreds of yards through the forest and then up a steep hill and then another 100 or more yards until finally reaching 300 North, all the while being so careful as to not leave any DNA or other forensic evidence behind. Well, if two people did it, they didn't leave DNA behind either, so I'm not buying anything on that. But let's bring back in our guests, Dawn Perlmutter, ritual murder expert, Joseph Scott Morgan, forensic death investigator, and private investigator Lauren Vellucci. Joseph Scott Morgan, your thoughts, could one person have done all that the defense is saying was done here?
Well, I didn't know that height was a qualifier for that. They're really going out in the weeds on that.
Well, one reason they said that is they said the water could be 3.5 feet deep in the river, and he's only 5'4". I think that's one of the reasons.
There are other places the river could be forded, and so to me, the big thing here though is control. And how do you control someone, particularly two young girls like this? My thought is with a weapon, and we heard about the clicking of the weapon being actuated and that sort of thing. And one key here, Vin, is that they found a round, an unspent round, at the scene, which is a .40 caliber, actually, just like the one I'm holding. This is unspent, just like the one they found, but they're saying that there are striations on it. There are a couple of laws on the books that I know as, former prosecutor, you're very well aware of across the country. It's a term called menacing. And how do you menace someone? Well, if you've got young women, young girls like this, they're not expecting to be, encounter some monster out in the woods. Well, one of the ways you menace an individual to get them to comply is that if you're carrying a firearm, this is a dummy firearm that we use at JSU for training, but if it's a semi-automatic weapon, you charge the weapon like this, and it's a very intimidating sound, particularly to these young girls. Well, it's intimidating to me. And you present this weapon, and they're already in a lost, cold place. Remember, down the hill, and he's directing them down there. If he's planned this thing out already, if he's got a location that he's going to, we know that they've recovered knives, these sorts of things. Maybe those limbs were trimmed. I have no idea, but he's perhaps nested in that area, just waiting for this opportunity. Yeah, this could be a one-man show. You're not talking. He's not dragging an NFL lineman down there. All right, you're talking about two young girls that he's doing this to. Allegedly.
Lauren Vellucci, your thoughts? Could one person have done this?
I agree 100%. Absolutely. Per the defense's statement that he would have had an hour and 17 minutes. Plenty of time. Brian Kohberger, for instance, far less time, and we know that he allegedly slaughtered 4 people. So it is something that one person could have done. I think that the point that they may have some good information and some good reasonable doubt is the dressing of Abby and not getting blood. However, the river was right there. So did they wash off? I don't know. But to me, it makes a lot of sense that it was more than one person. And I think that is a real possibility. I think that there's a lot of truth in this new information more than falsehood, and it would explain the differences in sketches and how they looked so different as if there was multiple people that were seen.
Dawn Perlmutter, we have about less than a minute here. Your thoughts, one versus more than one person?
I think it could be either way. I think it could have been one person that they could intimidate the girls, and especially if they had planned it ahead of time, if they, whether they stumbled upon them or, were just had this in mind, fantasized about it for a long time, that it could be one person or it could be more than one. I think it's also interesting that it's near the river. That happens to be another significant thing that occurs with ritual murders. They tend to occur near bodies of water also.
Dawn Perlmutter, great to have you on tonight. Joseph Scott Morgan, appreciate your insight and your time. Lauren Vellucci, great to see you as well. We're just getting started with all of this. I mean, so much information today, but thank you for your help tonight.